Hey guys, I think we're live. You
We
guys
are.
are we? I think we are. Do you guys see it? Can you feel that we're live?
I don't know feel, but I'm watching the stream right now and it hasn't popped up yet.
Well, that's awkward. Give it a sec. It'll pop up. I can. There's usually a bit of a delay with these kinds of things. I bet.
Oh yeah, there it goes.
Hey, look at that.
That- that's a hell
Oh,
of a delay. That's a hell
yeah.
of a
Well, it happens
delay.
all the time from my computer, especially if somebody's in chat. I'll get it like 5 minutes too late, and someone will be like, "This important point," and they'll be gone by the time I respond. It's always just the
Sorry,
best. Sorry, guy. Sorry, chat.
guy.
Cool. So let's go ahead and hop right into it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to You Have to Watch This podcast. I'm Devin.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Alan.
Huh.
He's not here. It makes me sad. But
Yeah, okay.
we actually have with us a very, very special guest today. Today we have Josh from Victims and Villains. Josh, you want to say a quick hi?
Hello, I am here, and I got arrested on the way over here for a DWS, driving while sexy.
But not detained. Arrested, but not detained. Interesting choice.
Yeah, it is a reference to the movie we'll be talking about later tonight.
I can't wait.
Yeah, Devin, you should have picked that up right away.
Oh, I did. Trust me. No, I didn't. There's so much about this movie, guys. So for those of you who haven't seen Lords of Salem, go watch Lords of Salem and come back and watch this podcast. We have so much to talk about before we get to Lords of Salem, though. But oh boy, guys. So we typically start this show by talking about things that we watched or any kind of pop culture news this week. Guys, have you watched anything interesting or new this week?
No.
Josh, have you?
He's just immediately no. I don't know. I this week has been a lot of theater runs for me. So like I went out and saw Air, Super Mario Bros. But a lot of the last week has been like actually diving into books again, which
I love it. Hold on.
reading is power.
We almost had a side podcast called "You Have to Read This" podcast. You think we're joking? We're not. Wait. Okay. What are you reading, and why do you love it?
So I just finished Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door,
Ooh.
and yeah, I'd seen the movie, and the book, if you guys don't know, is a fictionalized account of something that really happened, where a neighborhood woman kind of like is like the cool mom that everyone hangs out with, and she inherits her niece and two nieces after her sister dies, and she basically uh, restrains, beats, and like forces her. Uh, some of the neighborhood boys have
Yeah.
rape her. It's a
Oh,
really
awful.
brutal story. But
Awful.
it really actually happened. It's based on a real account.
Oh, okay. So that's even worse then.
So
Oh my gosh!
yeah.
What an uplifting tale you're reading, Josh. Holy cow! Yeah, I had no idea that's what that book was about. That is very interesting.
Yeah, and they made a movie about it, but like
Yeah.
nobody really knows because it came out 3 years after the comedy of the same name,
Right,
which
right, with that lady that played
yeah.
in 24.
hmm
Yeah.
Uh, oh, I can't remember. I can never remember her
Was it like
name. It's
Alicia
something.
Cuthbert or something?
There you go.
Nailed it.
Yes.
Nailed it. That's really unfortunate those two things share the same name. I can imagine many a blockbuster mix-up with those.
Okay, yeah, so movies with
Yeah.
blockbuster mix-ups. I had that happen with Jack Frost, and my uncle didn't really care to verify which Jack Frost I was buying.
Oh no.
Let me tell you how surprised I was.
Yeah, the same thing happened to my wife and my brother-in-law. They sat down to have a family evening, thinking they were getting ready to get into some Michael Keaton shenanigans, and that lasted about 10 minutes
They'd say
before
they
they
most
Yeah.
certainly were not.
realized.
Is this the business model for Asylum? Did we just hit on their business model where, Thor comes out, we'll release the mighty Thor and hope grandma mixes it up when she buys it for the grandkids?
Yeah, I guarantee that's what it is. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Because that, I mean, to be honest, you could say that it's just five guys who are stoned rewriting movies they watched, or letting 5-year-olds develop their own storylines to popular movies. Devin, the Asylum movies are not good for a reason, and I need to tell you this because you watch too much of them, and it affects your cognitive skills when you watch normal movies.
Listen. I told Ryan over our group chat, he is so lucky I haven't recommended nothing but Asylum movies for this podcast.
I would quit. I would quit.
I need an episode where you guys cover Meth Gator. Like, because it's coming. It's coming, and it's coming to a sewer near you this summer.
Oh, I have so many real and deep thoughts about the Sharknado franchise that I haven't even got to share with you guys. I'm very serious about this.
This is okay. So, for anybody wondering about why we make such a big deal out of this and why I said that this affects Devin's cognitive ability to rate normal films, this is a guy that loves Asylum movies and has real thoughts about Asylum movies. And then when we asked him to pick a romantic comedy, he had us watch The Marriage Story because he thought that's what counted as a romantic comedy, as a rom-com.
There were jokes and romance at one point.
Wait, are you talking about the Adam Driver Scarlet?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was my pick
what
for
is wrong with you?
We wanted to have Devin watch romantic comedies, but we also wanted to know what his baseline was. So we had Devin tell us a romantic comedy that you feel is your favorite romantic comedy for any reason why. And he's like, The Marriage Story, because every other rom-com I watch, the romantic problem that the couple gets into is just dumb, and this is the only one that seems real to me. Like, yeah, no, it's real. It's seriously real, because it's not a comedy. Because it's not a comedy.
There were a few jokes.
A few jokes. That was one of the most uncomfortable, like, film experiences I've ever had. Like, I am 100%. I've been married for 9 years. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Super uncomfortable.
Yes.
It just, I mean, now I understand where I went wrong. I totally get it. I understand the genre convention difference, which, by the way, I am bringing up later because I cannot wait to get into the weeds with horror movies with the both of you.
I think you just need to come to my podcast and we can do Asylum movies.
Done. This is it. Yes, invite me. I will always watch and always talk about it. Also,
Josh, thank you for being my safety net.
I also need an outlet for the Human Centipede movies if you're interested.
Oh, dude, I'm about it, man.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
They start off so great, and then by the end,
but it's
you're eating.
It's on purpose. It's on purpose.
It's so bad.
It's so good. Anyway, okay. So all of that, needless to say, we haven't watched much this week. For those of you that care, and I know there's a weird amount of you, which is good, I started watching Frasier. I'm officially watching Frasier. It's wonderful. It's delightful.
Nice. It is.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't watch it sooner. I'm officially an episode and a half in or whatever. I like this movie. I like this show. I'm going to keep watching it. That's all I got. So the other thing I wanted to bring up before we hop into the movie proper, Josh, you aren't here just because you're a sexier version of Alan. You want to tell everyone why you're here?
Yeah, so this upcoming weekend, this Friday and Saturday at the Alamo Draft House, we are doing the second annual Horrific Hope, which is the first film festival to be horror-centric and mental health focused. And we really, I think, stepped up our game from last year, in terms of not necessarily the content we're bringing. I loved each and every film, and that's not a knock to any filmmaker from last year. I think this year the themes are a lot more directed towards like one similar theme, and I don't know how that ended up happening. It's just out of coincidence. But this is we are also going to be bringing a documentary this year, We have over 20 Virginia premieres. We have a world premiere, and then we have like 5 or 6 U.S. premieres. And we have directors flying in from Norway, and all the money is going towards our mental health charity that we do to bring mental health resources into conventions, film festivals, speaking engagements, churches, and we're hoping, hopefully, within the next year, also to include schools.
Wow. So hold
Cool.
on. We chatted a little bit before the podcast about the film festival. You didn't mention any of that. You were like, "Yeah, we're doing all right. It's interesting." You weren't bringing directors in from Norway and world premiering movies.
It's called being humble. Uh, it's
Which you need
humility.
to learn, Devin.
No, it doesn't exist in my vocabulary. Not over here.
Yeah, so the directors are making their U.S. premiere. The movie's called Searching for Vestlemoy. We did a episode on our podcast, Abyss Gazing, about them. With them, they I talked about the film. We talked about Deathgasm. It's a great episode. Highly check it out. Once you're done this episode, of course, make sure to subscribe to You Have to Watch This podcast,
Heck
and
yeah.
also Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast. But uh, yeah, it's really interesting because I made friends with the director, one of the directors of that film last year. We did a we did we did a digital event together where we showed one of his movies and did a Q&A afterwards, and uh, it was really awesome. And I was really surprised, but this movie is like it's so funny. It's one of the funniest selections we got. We were able this year to do every feature is different, and I really liked that. To where we have a horror comedy Friday night. We're opening up with a documentary that explores the relationship between the Freddy Krueger fandom and mental health.
Wow.
Um, our world premiere this year comes from a first time director who was a co-writer on Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, which is one of the most underappreciated meta slashers of the new age. So if you love Scream, I highly recommend Leslie Vernon, but it is set in the same universe, so it's almost like a spiritual sequel
Hmm.
to that, and he's going to be in person as well. Um, and we have a block of shorts that all revolve around food for lunchtime.
Delicious.
Uh, now you got me like now you got me thinking about like what people can expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of goodies. We really tried to step outside of what we did last year. Because last year really be like a we wanted to be like a film festival
Hmm.
essentially. This year we kind of brought in different elements to where we got a little bit riskier. We are ending on House of a Thousand Corpses this
We'll have to
year,
talk about that later.
which is celebrating 20 years today that we are recording this podcast. And we are also doing our first ever cosplay contest with this year. We've got some great items to raffle off for our mental health raffle. We'll have suicide prevention and mental health resources both regionally and locally for those in attendance. It's just going to be a great time. If you guys attended last year, you guys know what you're in for. But I would also say that there are some surprises this year that, like I said, we really tried to make this year bigger and better. And it makes me really nervous for next year, actually.
And let's pretend we're the kind of person that thinks A Marriage Story is a rom com and forgot to buy tickets this year. Where do we go to buy tickets?
So you can actually go to the Alamo Draft House. Just Google Alamo Draft House Winchester and select your ticket for this upcoming Saturday. We
I
start at 10 a.m.
Very nice. I just popped the link in the chat. So I think that sounds like an awesome time. I mean,
Mhm.
I are there any, and this is me just hoping, so I don't know what your answer is going to be. Are there any resources for those of us that can't quite catch a flight but would like to be involved somehow?
Any resources, as in like mental health resources?
Yeah, anything that you would offer there that I could take a quick peek at. Anything that would give me a sense of what's going on.
Yeah, so we always, with the backbone of our when you go to our website, victimsandvillains.net,
Mhm.
you click the badge at the upper left-hand corner.
Mhm.
It'll drop down all the pages you can visit. The very first one is the mental health resource library. We have resources for people that are struggling with bullying, divorce, the veterans hotline. We have one that we just recently added where it's an organization that basically gives information about like how mental health affects sorry, how social media affects our mental health.
Hmm.
There's a lot of, there's like I said, there's a lot of great resources there as well.
I don't know how often I tell you this, but I love what you guys do at Victims. Please
Thank
keep
you.
that up. I genuinely do love that. It's such a great cause. So yeah, if you can check out the Horrific Hope Mill Festival, it sounds like it's going to be an awesome time for a really good cause, and arranged
We
by some
are
awesome people.
we are very close. I just talked to the gentleman today. I think we're about 10 tickets until we're sold out. So
Whoa!
come quick. Come gather all and see Captain Spaulding and the Firefly family on the big screen with independent filmmakers that you will probably never get to see on the big screen ever again. And I can say that because one of the directors, when we started talking about the series lineup, is the director of this short film called Incubus, which
Hmm.
plays during our last block called the Grindhouse Delight block. He said that not only is this a Virginia premiere, but this will be the only time the short will most likely ever play in Virginia. So if you
Wow,
want to see movies like that, this is the place for you.
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for that.
Of course.
So I think what we'll do, without further ado, let's get into our main topic for today. So today, since we have a special guest, was a special guest pick. Uh, Josh, would you like to tell us a little bit about this movie?
Of course, I've already brought it up, but I picked Lords of Salem, which is one of Rob Zombie's weirder films. Rob Zombie is, of course, our closing selection at this year's film festival of House of Thousand Corpses, the anniversary 20 years screening. So I wanted to do something from his filmography, and this movie is very weird, and I was very, very curious to hear what you guys said. I was very bummed that Alan wasn't here
Oh, we need to get his
to
hot
talk
take
about
on this
this.
movie. We need to make him watch it for next week. I think that Ryan, moving forward, you're not allowed to be a member of this podcast without having seen this movie. Is what I'm going to say. It is now a rite of passage for anybody who wants to be on the show. What do you think?
Man,
What, to deal with me freezing up and not being able to answer anything?
Also that, and know that I purposely planned the "what do you think" for when you came out of it and couldn't hear my question. So why don't we start by Josh? Why don't you tell me a little bit about your relationship to this movie? Because you were the one that picked it for us. So did you see it and love it? Did you see it and think it's weird? Has it been on your mind?
all right, so there's a point in the climax of this movie where there are faceless priests that are essentially doing the circle jerk, as one does. And
You didn't describe it
uh
wrong.
as like one of my best friends, the guy that I actually started Victims with, was like, "You should never watch this movie. It's dumb." And I was like, "Why is it dumb? Like, give me your hot take about it." And so I didn't watch it for years, and then finally I was like, "What's your big hang up on this movie?" And so he told me about that scene,
Yeah.
and I was like, uh, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna make my own decision. And I watched it, and I wanted to hate that movie so bad. Like even rewatching it last night, like I was like, I want to like, especially as a Christian, like this movie is very blasphemous. And I want to hate this movie so bad, but I'm so fascinated by the Salem witch trials
Mm-hmm.
and like how the town of like Salem like still like clings to that like memory or like that fame, that like this movie, I just it's a guilty pleasure for me. I definitely like was blown away the first time I watched this movie because it doesn't feel like a Rob Zombie movie. If you ever watch anything in his filmography is very vulgar. Not that there's not vulgarity in here, but it's like every other word is like the F word
Sure.
or like some other offensive language. And a lot of his movies are really like rural and kind of have this like hillbilly quality to it.
Okay.
This one doesn't have that. And so that's why like this one to me feels like if Rob Zombie was to ever do an A24 film, this would be it.
Yeah, that is a really interesting take on that. So I think Ryan is still working through some computer problems. So I'll hop in with my thoughts on this. I had no idea what to expect. I think I've seen this poster around before, but came into this completely blow. Whoops, 1 second here. We
Oh,
are now two people.
hey, we lost Ryan.
There we go. Okay, cool. Can you hear me, Josh?
I can't.
Perfect. All right. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about like my because like I said, I didn't know what to expect in this. I I've heard a little bit or know a little bit about, and this is going to sound like the weirdest thing, but you might actually know where I'm coming from. I know a little bit about kind of the ethos that sits around this movie, the whole like witch mentality. It's called Lords of Salem. I was
Sure.
guessing witches. It's got Rob Zombie's wife straight on the cover. I had a feeling it was a thing about witches. I know a bit about witches through a band called Ghost. Do you know Ghost at all?
I do know Ghost, yes.
I love Ghost. Ghost is great. I I feel like this movie is channeling Ghost in a lot of ways. And for
I
that
don't
reason
feel like that's wrong.
for that reason, like not a lot like shocked me except for like the very end of the movie. I didn't expect where this movie went and wasn't sure it was going to end in this way. And we'll do a big spoiler warning a little bit later when we get into exactly what's going on and what happened in the ending. But did you see the end of this movie coming?
I didn't. Like the first time that like I saw it, I was just kind of hooked because like I didn't understand like where it was going. But like man, like you're right. Like the ending of this movie is does feel like left field and
Yeah.
it feels so grand for how intimate this story
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and okay, so I watched it on this one. It was a streaming service I've never heard of before. It's called like Shutter or something like that. And
Dude, I love Shudder.
I have never heard of Shutter. Shutter's good because I have it now.
Dude, if you love horror, Shudder and Screambox are the two that are like top notch
Because
when it comes to quality.
there was stuff
Oh,
on Shutter that I have never even heard of that's on there. Not like the stuff that like's on Netflix and it's also on Shutter. Like these seem like really new things for me on there.
oh, I have so many recommendations I will give you after this
Please do.
after we
Please
end
do.
this
You are
call.
opening up my world to a whole new world of horror movies. So, first off, the one thing that this said was it said that it was a psychological movie, right? And I was wondering, so the plot of the movie seems pretty on the nose, right? Like thing A happens, thing B, thing C. It gets a little bit trippy in some places, but for the most part it's trippy on purpose. Unless I'm wrong, the events of the story actually did fold out correct, like actually did happen, right? Or was this something else?
Like, are you talking about like biographically,
No, not like in real
or
life, sorry, like
are you
diegetically. So
talking?
like in terms of the movie, like everything that we saw in the ending on screen actually happens.
That's the way that I take it
Yeah.
because, and I always forget about this is like the ending. Do you want me to stop talking real quick?
There we go. We're good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say it was like the ending of this movie when
Hmm.
you hear it, like you have to watch the credits and like there's
Yeah.
actually like newsreel footage that is like dubbed over. So like to me, like I took it as okay, this really took place, like these are real events that have transpired within this universe.
Okay.
Um but like I again like can see 100% how you're just like, man, this film feels like a fever dream. So it's like
Right.
it's not out of the ordinary to be like, oh yeah, like this stuff just didn't happen.
Yeah, I've had fever dreams that were very much like this dream, like this movie. So Ryan, welcome back. We missed you.
Hi.
I so we gave general impressions of it. My general impression, Josh said that he was told essentially that, you know, this was a movie he was told to stay away from, but despite his best efforts, he really likes the movie. It's one of his guilty pleasures. I have never seen a movie like this before, but I know a band that's something like this movie, and I like that band a lot. So the movie kind of made a little bit of sense in terms of the band for me. How did you feel about this movie? Tell me about your let me get those raw reactions.
Josh, I'm sorry.
I told you.
I'm so glad you're back.
I am so sorry. I feel better knowing that you said it's one of your guilty pleasures, because you only really say that if you understand what the general like consensus is of a movie. And I have my own. I'll fully admit it. Like I have my own guilty pleasures where people look at me sideways for liking. I get it. You know, you can't help what you
Sure.
like. But man, oh man. So when it comes to the horror genre, I'm not really big on witches,
Mm.
to be honest. Um, and to be honest, I'm not really the biggest Rob Zombie as a director fan.
He
So
he's a very acquired taste.
he's 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 a very acquired taste. I will fully admit that. I'm on your own interpretation of it, and it's subjective and everything. So I'm not saying he's bad. This just isn't my thing. um, and from what I heard from Devin, like it's a fever dream. And when I was going through some medical stuff a few years ago, I definitely had some fever dreams, and this movie ranks right up there with those experiences that I had.
Well, did you not like it
Um,
because of the fever dream aspect of it? Like, what parts didn't you? I mean, we're not doing spoilers just yet, but like, what about it like repelled you away from the movie?
to be like
Can
everything
I
from the way the what?
can I take a guess before you say?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
My guess is gonna be it lost you within the first 5 minutes because of all the weird nudity.
Listen, I wasn't expecting it.
Actually, that wasn't even that. That wasn't even part of it because there were witches in the woods. I figured that was coming, so it didn't shock me. Um, it was it was honest. A lot of the like, it was the it was a lot of the camera. It was partly the choices of camera angles like during non-active scenes. So like her walking around the apartment, walking to work, being at work. It was a lot of the choices that were made
Mhm.
cinematography wise
Mhm.
on those. And I really didn't like one of this all has to do with Rob Zombie himself. I don't find Rob Zombie's wife that good of an actress.
Oh, I was just gonna say I liked her acting.
I
I'm sorry, but no.
I I think I agree with you in most places. I think
Yeah.
there are I've seen all of Rob Zombie's movies
Mhm.
and I own probably about 80% of them on physical media. And I
Okay.
think this one plays to I think this is probably the film where he is placed to her strengths the greatest. Because I will go on record and say that she's not a great actress.
Wow. Okay.
But if you know how to direct and you are in the hands of the right person, I think you can, or if you know the strengths and weaknesses of that. Whereas like you go back and you watch like House 1000 Corpses, I love that movie.
Yeah.
It's but like she's very chaotic in that movie, and it kind of almost seems like they tried to like give her more depth with Devil's Rejects, and it didn't quite work for her. I didn't really like her as Michael Myers' mother in the Halloween movies. But this one, I feel like she's toned down enough to where like it's playing to her strengths.
Okay.
Well,
And I I I I will admit, because I'm not the biggest Rob Zombie fan
mhm.
when it comes to his movies anyway. As soon as I realized that this was one of his movies, I was in the wrong mindset. I was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
it's a Rob Zombie film. Ah, okay, fine, I'll watch it. And then because I'm doing this, and and like it got to her as like the main character, and I'm like, oh, okay. And there were just a lot of scenes where it was like, oh, okay, well, like the best way that I can sum up this movie is it's an awesome idea. From a person who's not big on witches, this movie was an awesome idea,
Mhm.
incredibly good idea for a movie. I just do not believe that Rob Zombie carried out the vision that he intended.
What? Okay, I want to dig into that then. So, what was the vision behind the movie then? Because we were talking when you were gone about how I didn't see the ending of this movie coming at all.
Mm.
I wasn't expecting it to do what it did. I wasn't expecting it to go as far as it did. And Josh put it pretty rightly, where he said, it's a very broad ending for what is a very personal movie.
Yeah, no, it's a very personal movie because it has to do with, again, no spoilers. It has to do with a certain person
Yeah.
of a certain type,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, Devin, how many witch movies have you seen?
Oh, so I want you guys to know, I googled scariest witch movies, and I have an IMDb list of 26 titles. Uh,
Okay.
to let you know how good this list is, number 9 on the list is Return to Oz, of the scariest witch movies. So
And how many of them have you seen? That's the main thing.
I've seen The Conjuring, I've seen Witch, I've seen Rosemary's Baby, Heredity, The Blair Witch Project, and I think that's just about where it stops. I don't think I've seen
Okay.
any of these other
Okay.
movies.
And a lot of witch movies that I have seen,
Mhm.
what kind of happens in this movie, I've seen before.
Okay.
The ending was different,
Yeah.
a tad different artistically, but the main carryover again. There we go. The main carryover theme of what happens, I've seen in other stuff, much lower level movies, but yeah. And once we get into spoilers, I will explain what I mean, because I have a feeling that what I am focusing on in the storyline is different to what you guys are focusing on in the storyline. I think.
I think as the I guess amongst this conversation as the horror expert here,
Oh yeah.
uh, I think that that's one of the conversations that comes up a lot in in our podcast, where if you've seen like one slasher, chances are you've seen them all.
Mhm.
Um, the difference is just the way creativity they bring to how you kill the people. It's not necessarily the story.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think with that with that laid out, I think you also can make the same exact thing because, like, I've seen other witch movies before. Witch movies, like they're not. I don't necessarily hate them as much as you, Ryan, but they're not my favorite type of subgenre of horror to do, or to watch. So like, but I also grew up in the whimsical era of the '90s where I loved Sabrina the Teenage Witch
Oh yeah.
and
That
Charmed and
yeah.
Bewitched.
I got you. I mean, Bewitched. That's the one with like the sisters in the house,
No, wasn't Bewitched the one
right?
with the guy that had like his like live-in witch friend and she like wrinkled her nose and magic happened?
That's right.
Yeah.
That was
Yes.
the Naked Night show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it was the only
It
Nick
was
at Night show.
That
from
would
like
there
60,
were several.
60s or
Stop it, Devin.
70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that like it's not that I hate them. It's just that witch movies tend to follow like a few different narratives, and one of the reasons why I'm starting to get more into horror than I was before is because of that little nuance, like artistical style in the storyline. Josh,
Sure.
just like you were explaining, it's not the fact that like you go to see a slasher movie to see a completely different story narrative than the last slasher movie. It's you're going to a slasher movie to see, hey, how does this director do the mad crazy person?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
It's going to be the same thing. It's just the little nuances. Like, do you like a slasher movie set at a racetrack more than you like it being set at a summer camp? Like, what direction do you want to go with this?
I really want to
So,
see a slasher at a racetrack now.
We got to do it. We got it. Oh,
yeah. So, I
it's called
mean, so
NASCAR'd. Nailed
when
it.
it comes to like witch movies and other horror movies, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, let's go with witches. Are we going to do classic American witches? Are we going to do European witches? Are we going to do what they consider witches in like Arab culture? Are we going to do what they consider witches in like Asian or different types of Asian
Mm.
culture? And you can do all of them. That's fine. It's just I find myself kind of like at the end of most witch movies.
Okay.
And
I
I think it has to do more of like the person doing spells thing, which is why I find
Sure.
myself liking witch narratives in comedies more than I do like them in serious like tone storylines.
We'll talk. I think we'll talk about this a little bit more in the spoiler section.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily consider this to be a witch movie, and I'll explain why when we get there. But for me, I think I'm not really like a history buff. There are portions of history that fascinate me, and
Yeah.
the Salem witch trials happen to be one of them. Uh, and I think I owe all of that to Winona Ryder because of the Crucible. Is a
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
fantastic movie, and I was like, what is this story? And lo and behold, like there's all of this like history behind it, and that history just like fascinated me. It's still to this day like Salem is like one of the places that like my wife and I want to go on vacation for, want to do like the history tours and stuff like that. But I think that's one part of the reason that I really enjoyed this movie.
Hmm.
So
Well, I think we're just about the time where we should probably put the spoiler warning up. Listen, if you guys haven't seen Lords of Salem and you don't want it spoiled for you, please go watch it. The ending for me, and at least for Josh and I, was quite surprising.
I will also say this that if you live in the US, this movie is currently streaming for free on Tubi
Oh,
with commercials. So it is completely free.
yeah. If you're currently in
It,
the UK, download. What was it? What was it, Josh?
it's it's called Shutter.
Shutter. Download Shutter. Shutter is opening up a whole new world for me, Ryan, of horror movies that I didn't know existed. It is a
Oh,
veritable smorgasbord of new horror movies for Devin.
I'm just being a troll. I'm
Oh,
just being a
gotcha.
troll.
So anyway, with that all out of the way, let's get into spoilers. Why isn't this a witch movie, Josh?
to me, like I think it the to me, I think it's a lot more deeper than that. Like, yes, it is very clearly by the end of the film, it's very much a witch movie. But to me, I feel like this is a story about not only legacy and understanding who you are, where you come from, your
Mhm.
family ties, and toxicity that can come with them. But I think also it's fascinating to me because part of the underlining subplot of this movie dealing with the record also demonstrates like the impact that media has on us as individuals and consumers.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Wow, that is a
I definitely did not go that deep in this
that is a
completely
no.
at all.
That's a deep and fascinating read. That's why I wanted you here.
I run a mental health and horror podcast and film festival, so I'm the guy that's gonna look at things really deep.
That's
Yeah.
perfect though. So where did the movie fall on all of those things though? I mean, was it music has a profound impact on all of us, so we should never listen to it again, and your family's the worst, don't listen to them? I'm asking because I totally saw those same things, Josh. I'm asking for someone else who also thinks Marriage Story is a great rom-com. Wink.
Oh, wink, wink.
Hmm.
I think for me, like this movie, like the horror genre in particular is something that I have a really interesting relationship with. So like when I come from a conservative Christian household, and we did. If you were born Southern Baptist, you don't believe in horror movies. They're of the devil, and so it's like the forbidden fruit. The more was told no, the more I wanted to see it. So
Sure.
like, turned 18, went to Blockbuster, got all the movies that I could afford at the time, and horror to me became an outlet for anger. So like, instead of actually dealing with my issues, I lived vicariously through Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees,
Mm,
Freddy Krueger. And I got to this point where I it had like the media that I was consuming had a really negative impact on my mental health, a
mm,
really negative impact on uh my like my anger and like how I would outburst. And I felt like one day, like, I just like was kind of praying, and I was like, I think that I need to just give this up.
sure.
And ironically, I gave it up, walked away from it, sold all my movies in the genre for 5 years, and worked on my own mental health. So like, when I'm talking about someone, the impact that media can have on you, not just music, but film, books, social media, uh, is because like that was once me.
Hmm.
And now I kind of have this line in the sand where, like, if I feel any negative ounce of energy, whether it's anxiety, anger, hatred, um, anything, I stay away from this genre. I love this genre to death,
Hmm.
but if I'm not in the right headspace, I can't do it,
Sure.
because of this. I think that that's one of the fascinating um, aspects of Heidi's arc throughout the course of this movie,
Hmm.
is that she's not really sure why this record is having this impact on her every time she hears it. And you also see that with the women of Salem every time that they see him. I think it's zombie planted really subtly throughout the film, and it allows that effect to crescendo in the finale, where they all meet together in the theater and have this very occultic mass suicide.
Hmm.
But to me, I think that it speaks volumes about like the effects that media can have on our lives if we allow it to be unchecked.
Yeah, that's a really good read on that, because I really just took this at surface level and said, okay, this record is, triggering something in them, and not that it then, can abstract itself into real things, but like it's made specifically for them, and kind of took it literally at face value. Does that help you at all with liking this movie, Ryan?
I hate the
Knowing
position I'm in. I hate the position I'm in
what? Tell me.
because here's the thing, Josh. Everything you said is on point for what the movie shows. It is. I see that. Okay, I get it. I really, really do. Um, but Devin, remember our talk about the movie you had us watch about when I see something, I'm either really on board for it or I just completely go off the
Yes.
rails.
Yes.
Okay. Even though this movie, by Josh's description, has a great message and
Hmm.
should be talked about, it just went off the rails for me.
It could not
So,
get you back.
okay, so now that we're in spoilers, I can
Yes.
deep dive into where I was like about
Okay.
this movie. I knew from the get go, from like the second, from like I had my curies, the Q, the fancy Q word for questions. Curies,
Queries.
queries. I had
Queries.
queries in the first scene. Then I knew the second scene that the landlord lady was after her,
Okay. Okay.
and then and it was solidified with, "Come down and have some drinks with my friends."
Yeah.
And as soon as she sat down, I'm like, they're all witches. They're all witches, and they're going after her for something. They're going after her for something. And then I was thinking about it, and then you've got the guy that's like writing the book or
Yeah.
peddling his book on the show, and like he's doing his research, and I was kind of mental, like it's like I was like I'm watching it, I'm kind of mentally out of it. I get back into it, back out of it. Kristen comes home from work. I pause it. We talk a little bit about her day, and I tell her about the movie. I tell her the steps of the movie, and she looks at me and she goes, while eating ice cream, she goes, she's never seen the movie before. She goes, she's the son of the guy that killed the witches. I explain everything that's happened in the movie about the record and how she's not feeling well, and like and my thing about like the landlord ladies and like what I feel about them. And I'm watching it, and then he's on like findyourfamily.com, like like some like rip off like ancestry.com or something like that. And it goes down, and I pause the movie, and I just yelled, "You're right!" And she goes, "I know." She goes, and it was one of those things where it was like, I knew they were witches. I knew they were after her. I knew that there was something about her, and I should have seen the road signs that my wife did with me describing it. That that like that was her. And so that's what I'm talking about. Like you've got a coven of witches that is putting a curse on the ancestor of the person who like either killed specifically them or their coven, and they're getting like revenge in the future. Like I've seen that whole witch narrative like kind of like before, and or I've read it. I've seen it. It seemed too familiar to me. That's the thing. And I mean, hell, the Disney movie with the three sisters,
Hocus
like that's
Pocus.
technically what they were. Hocus Pocus. Like they were getting revenge on the town people for killing them. Like later on in the future. And so it's kind of a similar narrative through some other witch movies that I've seen and stories that I've read. And then you've got the whole like art aspect to like the ending, and it reminded me a lot of the book jackets I read of Rob Zombie's albums when I was younger, and I got like Hellbilly Deluxe and stuff like that. That whole montage reminded me of a lot of the like booklet art that was in like the CD booklets. But it was one of those things where like that was going on, and like the music, and then what really killed it for me to where I was just like, man, I can't with this. Like I feel bad because Josh obviously likes this movie a lot, and that's why we're watching it, and I'm really trying to find something here because I don't want to bomb on him. But then they start playing the music in front of all the Salem women that are in the theater.
Yeah.
And the only instrument they show is a really crappy bone violin that the lady's not even playing remotely close to what the music sounds like.
We've had this talk where if you're out of a movie, little things like that will take you farther out of it. But if you're in the movie, you won't notice those things. So Josh, just so you know, that's where he's coming from.
That's absolutely fair. And I'm not here at the end of the day to like make you Ryan or any of your listeners or viewers watching us live like this movie if you don't. This movie is like this movie is really like it's really personal, but it's really weird at the same time. And I think that's it's kind of the reason that I enjoy it. I think that I like when Rob Zombie does like personal stuff like this.
Yeah.
But again, I understand like how this is not everyone's cup of tea, and I probably would say this is probably, for as weird as it is, I feel like this movie's probably his most digestible. Outside of Halloween, this would probably be the one that like if you want to like see Rob Zombie like not be quite so weird as 31, but not quite so like out there as like Super Beasto or Halloween 2. This is the movie.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely it was a lot more tame than I was expecting from him. Like, I was expecting like intestines on the
Yeah,
wall at some point or something, and all I really got was a lot of awkward nudity and his wife riding a goat.
yeah.
I mean, that's all part of the
So
witch mythos, though. Like, all of that is part of it. Like,
I mean, yes, yes, it is. Like the witch mythos is that you've got particularly women because
mm-hmm,
men are warlocks,
mm-hmm,
but
mm,
you've got particularly women that believe that like actual Satan, not Satanists,
mm-hmm.
actual Satan is like their lord.
Yeah.
And so they do everything they can against what's supposed to be holy. So, like at the beginning of the movie, they show them dancing around the fire because they're supposed to be defiling. My speech is really messed up today. Respecting their bodies, which is supposed to be like the temple of God. Like your body's supposed to be the temple of God. So they're disrespecting that. And that's why they're doing what they're doing around the fire. And everything they do that brings them. Yeah, I know. Too, boy. I see you.
He's showing his tattooed arms, by the way.
Yeah,
for the listeners.
So they're doing what they're doing to get closer to Satan, the way you would have as the reverse, people doing good things for people that can't do anything back for them, or doing just good Christian charity. Like it's the complete opposite to get further to one side compared to the other. And so when it comes to witches, then this was par for the course for what you would consider the classic American Christian witch or anti-Christian witch.
so like real quick, just to clarify, because I've studied and like I've had conversations. There are technically two camps of uh people that identify as Satanists. There
Interesting.
are people that I think the proper term is and if I get this wrong, I deeply apologize. Please uh please forgive me. But if I remember correctly, there are people that like actually acknowledge Satan as Lord the way that the witches do in this movie. And then there is a branch of um the Church of Satan that like believes that you as your own body are God and that there is neither heaven nor hell. Um, when you die essentially. Um, and so the witches that are in this movie have more in line as Ryan's describing them with what you would normally see like what we think about as like traditional like Satan worshippers or like
Gotcha.
Satanists, I guess.
And that's where in like movies where like they would have like a cult. Like that's one of the main like and and when it comes to movies between the two camps, there's a very fine line because in movies they will depict both groups of Satanists as kind of the same, and it's really down to nuance in dialogue on which camp the main person's dealing with. So like in this, these witches are Satanists in the sense that they believe in Satan. And they worship him, and it is the reverse side of the coin to Christianity. Like that's exactly what it is. And then you have the other side, which is basically people who identify as either atheist or agnostic or humanists or any other type of non-faith thing. And they've developed their own little like church, and they have their own little and they have their own list of beliefs and everything. But that has nothing to do with faith. That's just like, hey, this is what we want to do, and if you want to join, you can. But in movies, they tend to use them as like a conspiracy cult, and they're usually the ones that trying to install the earthquake machine under our is at the center of the earth. So
Listen, I'm glad you guys both came into this movie knowing so much about the background of this. My only exposure to this was an episode of Metalocalypse. If you guys haven't watched it, you have to watch it.
That's
I'm
amazing.
seeing them
Now,
in September.
now
It's so good. Are you
that
really?
that is a show. That is a show that Josh and I could sit and watch together and enjoy equally. That is a show that.
Then
I
you'll both
love that show.
know the episode we're talking about where they have to find a religion and they go, "We're going to a Satanist church. It's going to be the most
Oh.
metal." And it's this little guy. Remember, everybody, there's a bake sale on Thursday, and clean up after yourselves before you leave. This is a church of Satan, not a trash house. It's
Yes.
so good.
My favorite one is
Yeah.
when they go to the atheist church and it's a guy dressed up like the Pope going, "Let us read from the book of which we do not believe about the things that we do not believe." And then someone yells and goes, "There's a riot outside. It's the agnostics." And there's people holding signs that say, "You cannot be really sure. You cannot be really sure."
That show, I feel like, didn't get any, like, nearly as much attention as it deserves. It was such a good
Well,
show.
Oh,
I mean, and it's sad because the creator is such a good musician, is such an incredible musician.
Yeah.
It's sad that that show didn't get as more popular than what it did.
don't throw the baby out the bathwater. Is what I was trying to say. Because they
but
are
it's so
getting
fun
ready
to.
to do new seasons, a
No.
new movie,
What?
Nice.
and more live shows. And I think they're working on a new album right now as well.
Oh my god, yes.
All right, listen, Josh, we're getting you back on.
Mermaider
board.
is like
Mermaider.
I need a Mermaider
Yeah.
3. I need a Mermaider 3, 4, 5, and 6.
We're getting you back on for
I-
the Metalocalypse movie, is what we're saying.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. So I think, okay, you
I
guys are
can
gonna
feel
think
the
this is.
tornadoes in the back of my mind. I'm just so happy right now.
So the last thing I want to say of this movie, you guys are gonna think I'm so dumb for thinking this, but really, truly, up until even the last, like, up until the credits rolled, basically, I still expected a character to run into the middle of what's happening with, like, a shotgun or something and save our main character and run away. And when the credits just rolled, and I went, "That's how it ends?" And, like,
So, not to cut you off.
No.
So Ryan predicted this movie,
Yeah.
how it would end because he'd seen other films like it.
yeah,
I knew that wasn't going to be the case in this movie because it's Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie does not do happy movies
it's fair.
Oh.
whatsoever.
He loves the French ending.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I got. And at the end, I was like, and you're right, Josh. At the end of it, some like news footage rolls over some like black and white stills to talk about like essentially what the police had found that day, and like what the police and like, I think the part where I was like, did this really happen in universe? Was like, didn't she like give birth to the Antichrist? What was the starfish thing?
So, all right. So, I think Ryan brought this up a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
But the three witches are like, it's kind of ambiguous. Like what they're either the witches from the beginning of the movie or they are some variation descendants of them.
Right.
But it's a scene between Francis, the guy that's like on his like on Heidi's show talking about his book. He's
Mhm.
talking to the other author about it and asking if he has anything on Reverend Nathaniel Hawthorne,
Yeah.
who it was the witch hunter, who's like the line that Heidi comes from, and he said that there's a point in the movie where he says something to the extent of that there was a prophecy stated that a descendant would like give birth essentially to he was either a demon or like Satan himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that thing that you're seeing at the end where they're
Mhm.
letting it raise, that is like that prophecy coming to fruition.
And that's just like, and I mean, because so I think the thing where I was like, oh, is this a psychological movie? Is the news report at the end is just kind of mundane about it, and they're like, "Oh, we found all of these bodies in this."
Well,
in this.
because that's how it would be.
They
Because
weren't
you
like-
still have like years of growth. Like
Yeah,
that's how it would be. If something like that were to happen, it would just be like, oh yeah, no, there was this weird mass suicide in this town like 30 years ago, but there's this 30-year-old named Steve who's running for mayor. I think he's great.
right, like
Yeah. So like like from someone that is a Christian and has read the Book of Revelation,
Mhm.
along with like what the other like New Testament prophecies have like talked about, they talked like specifically about like the end times and
Mhm.
how like you're gonna see like crazy events take place.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like yeah, I think and I believe that like you will see one of those if you happen to live in those days. I think they will come
Mhm.
to pass. But I think also at the same time like like this happened in the United States of America for one. For two, like if there really ever was like actual alien
Yeah.
contact, the government's been hiding it from us. I definitely think that if they somehow like stumbled upon the Antichrist, he's in Area 51.
He's like they're
100%.
hiding it. They're not going to be like
100%.
they're not going to be like, "Hey, there's this mass suicide in this church. We met the most interesting child." Like on the news or anything like that, or like I found a weird starfish or something,
Well,
like because that's what I figure is like an unexplained
here's
mass or something would be fine by the bodies. I think that was the point that
Yeah.
maybe went, "What's this thing psychological?"
so spirit. This is supernatural.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's how
Yeah.
I interpret the whole like starfish being born as the Antichrist. Um, one, now Finding Nemo takes a completely different meaning and is now a sequel.
Yep.
Um,
Perfect. Perfect.
so so anyway, when she's in the room looking at the cross,
Yeah.
and she's like doing wax on, wax off at the same time,
Yeah.
and in front of the cross, the big, really bad gorilla suit dude that's like standing behind her.
Yeah.
Okay, that's part one. Part two is the weird intestine baby that
Yeah.
she
That was
plays
creepy.
airplane with
Yeah.
in
Creepy.
the church. That's part two, and then part three. Well, and then also in part two is her falling asleep and the weird baby thing walking up to the edge of the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then part three is her giving birth to the starfish.
Okay.
Those three things are linked. It only happens in like a week and a half, but she gets
They're all those.
weird furry Satan shows up, and then the next thing you know, she has a dream about a baby, and then the next thing you know, she gives birth.
Yeah.
Those three things are linked. The starfish is Rosemary's baby, except the baby came out of Rob Zombie's wife, which I think we can all agree is not surprising.
Yeah.
It's Rob Zombie. That's what his kid would look like.
The most concise description of what happens in this movie I've ever heard.
He's not wrong.
No.
He's out of line, but he's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
All right, last question then. Did this scare you guys at all? It's a horror movie. Did it scare you? Did it give you the heebie-jeebies?
Right, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, it did me a little bit.
The horror for me in this came more from like, it really scared me, no. But in my mind, this is where the horror comes from. The horror comes from the story and the narrative, not really so much the like shock value. Because the one time in this movie that would have been a jump scare for me, I laughed. And that's when she goes into her apartment, turns on her light, and there's just a corpse hanging there like it's a coat on a hanger in the corner, just kind of hanging out like the flat lawyer from Beetlejuice. Like
All right.
Goes by on the meat hook. Goes by on the
Yeah, there's not a whole lot that like gets under my skin when it comes to the horror genre that like makes me like legitimately afraid. And I would probably say the few films that do are like films that are like based in reality.
Sure.
And so when there's like I believe in the supernatural, but I think experiencing something supernatural and watching it in a fictionalized setting are two completely different things. And if I'm watching the latter versus experiencing the former, then I don't think it's scary. So there's just this is just a weird movie. So
yeah. and you just kind of
Yeah, I
take
don't
it as a
necessarily
weird
say
movie.
it's a weird movie. It's not necessarily a scary movie. It's just weird.
All right.
Yeah, no. I completely get that, and Josh, your feelings about this movie are like completely valid, and anyone who feels the way you do about it, you're completely valid.
Yeah.
Everyone's allowed to love this movie as much as they want. This is coming from someone who considers Jurassic Park: The Lost World like Jurassic Park 2, actual Jurassic Park 2 in LA, as with the giant 76 ball from the gas station rolling by the convertible.
Mhm.
That is my favorite Jurassic Park movie, hands down. And no one can ever tell me that it's not the best.
Oh, it's so
So
real weird. Ryan was just kicked out of this call. I don't know what happened, guys. Suddenly he's muted and can't say anything.
So I feel for anyone who likes a movie that is considered to be like the meh of like a director's material or the meh one of a series. I
Mhm.
get it, because everyone has their own quirk, tastes,
Yeah.
and that's fine. So, Josh, thank you for having me watch this movie. Even though I bombed on it for 90% of the time here, I did appreciate watching it. So, thank you. I did appreciate it.
Aw.
I'm always like, how can I outdo myself when it comes to Ryan? Ryan's a tough movie critic to like win over. I was really surprised you like Texas Chainsaw, and I almost went and was like, what? Maybe I'll bring another Texas Chainsaw. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go the complete opposite way. We end the film festival with Rob Zombie. Let's do a Rob Zombie movie.
Yeah, no, I mean it's I am definitely, I'm picky and I'm opinionated in everything, even though I feel like I'm not. Like, if you were to sit me down and like ask me like on a questionnaire, are you a picky person? No, I'm not a picky person. Are you opinionated? No. And then everyone I know behind me's going, just going, yes, he is.
Well, thanks for having us watch that, Josh. Before
Yeah.
we
So
go ahead.
before you end, real
Yeah,
quick,
go for it.
I just have a random trivia fact
Love
for
it.
you guys. Did either one of you guys grow up on Keenan and Kel?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Do you know the connection between that movie and that series and this movie?
Someone
No.
drank orange soda.
No. Uh, so one of Heidi's co-hosts, Herman,
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful gentleman with the afro and the
Oh yeah.
sideburns,
Mm-hmm.
rocking it. That is Keenan's dad.
No.
Yes.
That's cool. I didn't
Of
know that.
course, Ken Forhay, man, he has done. I hope I said that name right, dude. He's done so many horror movies.
Huh.
So, yes, that is Mr. Rockmore.
That's amazing, and I didn't know that. Wow.
You're welcome.
Wow. So I think that concludes our talk on Lords of Salem. First off, Josh, thank you so much for having us watch the movie, and thank you for coming on the podcast. Where
Of
can
course.
people find you specifically?
So the only social media apps that I'm really active on are Letterboxd, which is at Captain Nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movie where you share what you watch, essentially.
Yeah.
So the perfect social media for your audience.
Oh yeah.
But I also occasionally will make TikToks over at Gent Ghostface GENT.
And then any shout outs for victims?
Of course, you guys can follow Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and wherever you guys get your podcasts from. We also run a podcast network where you guys can find our shows of Gazing, Brilliant but Lazy, Animind, and That's High Praise, our Nicolas Cage podcast. Wherever you guys get your podcast from as well. And Horrific Hope Film Festival is going to be in the Alamo, Winchester, this upcoming Friday and Saturday, April 14th and 15th. And you guys can follow our updates, follow us on Facebook as well.
And again, link for that is in chat. I think you just get tickets for that at drafthouse.com/Winchester/Horrific Hope Film Festival.
Yep,
So
that sounds about right.
Yeah, I was reading the URL out. I hope I got it right. But yeah, so for you so you can find You Have to Watch This podcast in all of our shows, which is a Rum Runners podcast network show. You can find us anywhere that you get your podcasts. So that's places like Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, that little podcasting purple icon, anything like that. We're also on YouTube. We're on Twitch. We are live every week at this same time. So please feel free to give us a follow, give us a like, comment on any one of these videos. If you have any recommendations for movies that you'd like us to watch, please let us know. I have people who genuinely message me and tell me you need to do this for the podcast. And some of them have already made episodes, and some of them are in the process. So I am listening, and we will be watching a lot of Sergio Leone in the future, to some of you that recommended that. Spaghetti Westerns. Ryan's done. He's done listening. He doesn't want this. I can't wait.
Wee wee wah wah wah.
It's that. It's gonna be a month of that, Ryan. It's not actually, but
oh my god,
I can't wait.
You know how I feel about westerns and cowboys. And
I
country
know.
music,
That's
anything
why
that has to do with any of that.
That's why I can't wait to show you some of the ones that I've been watching but not telling you about. It's gonna be good.
Eyes are burning in the back of my skull and rolling back.
This is why I do this, Ryan, is for you. Anyway,
why did I join a movie podcast?
For You Have to Watch This podcast, I'm Devin.
I'm Ryan. That was really weird. That was really weird.
And you know what? For this week, I'm also Alan.